The Galactic Council thought humans were naive. Then we pulled out every ship, every engineer, every farmer, and they learned what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Ambassador Krelnax of the Vrex Collective slammed his primary manipulator against the resonance pad, the sound echoing through the crystalline chamber like a death knell. Around the circular table, representatives from 47 species shifted uncomfortably in their specialized seating, their various forms of anxiety manifesting in clicked mandibles, twitching antennae, and fluctuating bioluminescent patterns. "Order. I demand order," Krelnax's translator barked, though his own composure was clearly fractured. "We have been trying to reach the human delegation for 72 standard cycles. Every embassy, every communication channel, every diplomatic courier has been turned away or simply ignored." Counselor Thessa of the Aquarian Depths rippled her translucent form in what her species considered a gesture of deep concern. Her voice bubbled through her translator with an unusual tremor. "This is unprecedented. In the 300 cycles since humanity joined the galactic community, they have never missed a single council session. Not one. They pride themselves on their reliability." "Perhaps their communication systems have failed," suggested Junior Delegate Pip Talk, though even he didn't sound convinced. The small furry creature's ears lay flat against his skull, betraying his fear. Ambassador Zexthor of the Silicon Confederacy, whose species had existed for millennia and prided themselves on logic above all else, interfaced directly with the Council's central database. His crystalline form pulsed with data streams before he spoke in measured, grave tones. "Negative. We have confirmed that all human communication networks are functioning at optimal capacity. They are receiving our messages. They are simply choosing not to respond. Furthermore, all human diplomats across the galaxy have simultaneously withdrawn to their homeworld or human colonies. Every single one." A collective wave of unease swept through the chamber. Species that had never shown fear in the face of stellar phenomena or hostile armadas now felt the creeping cold of genuine dread. This was something different. Something none of them had anticipated. "What was the last official communication from Earth?" asked High Arbiter Mulsuth, the Council's eldest member, whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of 3 previous galactic civilizations. Her ancient voice carried the weight of experience that suggested she understood the gravity of the situation far better than most. Krelnax pulled up the holographic record, and a human face appeared in the center of the chamber. Ambassador Sarah Chen, humanity's chief diplomat, stared out at them with an expression that, even translated across species barriers, radiated barely controlled fury. Her dark eyes held something that made even predator species instinctively lean back. The message was only 10 seconds long. "The human delegation is formally withdrawing from all Galactic Council proceedings, effective immediately. Do not contact us. We will contact you if and when we deem it appropriate." Her voice was ice. "We trusted you. We believed in this council. We were wrong." The recording ended and silence filled the chamber like a suffocating gas. "Replay the vote," Mulsuth commanded quietly. The one that preceded their withdrawal. The holographic projector shimmered and displayed the council floor from 4 cycles prior. The motion had been introduced by the Kestran Empire, supported by a coalition of older species. Resolution 7743. Mandatory genetic archive collection. Every species in the galactic community would be required to submit complete genetic profiles of their population to a centralized database, allegedly for mutual protection and disease prevention. The human delegation had spoken against it. Ambassador Chen had taken the floor, her voice passionate but measured, explaining humanity's historical reasons for opposing such measures. She had spoken of eugenics, of genocides, of how genetic registries had been weaponized on Earth. She had asked for a compromise, proposed alternative solutions, invoked the Council's own founding principles of individual sovereignty. The older species had been dismissive. Ambassador Vrenkel of the Kestran Empire had actually laughed, his translator catching his contemptuous tone perfectly. "The humans who have been part of this community for barely a cosmic heartbeat presume to lecture us on galactic safety? Your species still has violence on your homeworld. Your moral authority is questionable at best." The vote had been called. 43 species voted in favor. 3 abstained. Only 1 voted against. Humanity. We exercised our treaty rights, Krelnak said defensively, watching his past self in the hologram vote in favor of the resolution. The vote was legitimate, was it? Molsooth's ancient eyes fixed on him. Play the next part. The hologram shifted to show Ambassador Chen's face after the vote was announced. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her posture had solidified, like molecular structures crystallizing into diamond. When she spoke, her voice carried a quality that translated across every species' perception as profoundly dangerous. I see. So this is how it works then. We come here in good faith. We contribute our resources, our knowledge, our defense capabilities to this community. We share our music, our literature, our very DNA through cultural exchange programs. She paused, and the pause seemed to stretch across light years. And when we say, please don't do this one thing because our history has taught us it ends in atrocity, you not only ignore us but mock us for our concern. Frenkel had waved a dismissive appendage. Trauma, humans are always so emotional. This is for the greater good and you'll comply like everyone else. Chen's smile in that moment had been terrifying. We're human, Ambassador. We wrote the book on malicious compliance. You'll get exactly what the resolution demands. Every human, every genetic profile, compiled and delivered within the required time frame. She stood from her seat. And then we're done with you. You can't just leave the Galactic Council, Frenkel had scoffed. You've signed treaties, trade agreements, defense pacts, all of which have withdrawal clauses that we carefully negotiated. We're lawyers and bureaucrats and paper pushers, Ambassador. It's one of our species' greatest talents. We read the fine print. All of it, did you? Her smile had grown colder. We will fulfill the letter of every obligation, and not one molecule more. Goodbye. The hologram faded. Counselor Thessa broke the uncomfortable silence that followed. They delivered the genetic profiles as promised. Complete, comprehensive, exactly as specified in the resolution. I verified it myself. Her form darkened with what her species displayed as guilt. And then every human ambassador, every human trade representative, every human stationed on non-human worlds began requesting immediate return transportation. They provided the required notice period as specified in the employment and residency treaties. Everything by the book. Our trade routes, Piptok squeaked suddenly, his small body trembling. Oh no! Oh no, no, no! Someone check the trade routes. The economic minister interfaced with the Galactic Trade Network, and his chromatic display shifted rapidly from calm blues to alarmed reds. Humans have canceled every trade agreement, legal notice provided as required. All contracts honored to the letter through their termination dates, with appropriate compensation for early termination where applicable. But they're not renewing anything. Not a single shipping route. Not one mining operation. He paused, his form flickering with data overload. They're pulling out of everything. That's impossible, Zexthor said, though his logical mind was already running calculations. Human shipping companies handle 37% of all interstellar cargo in this sector. Their mining operations provide 41% of our refined heavy metals. Their agricultural exports feed 16 species that struggle with food production on their own worlds. Not anymore, the economic minister replied quietly. As of cycle's end today, all operations cease. All contracts expire. All human vessels return to human space. Krelnax felt his respiratory system struggling. But that will cause economic collapse across at least 30 systems. Species will starve. The shipping delays alone will, yes, Molsooth interrupted, her ancient voice heavy with the weight of understanding. That's precisely the point. We wanted their compliance, we got it. Every letter of every law, every treaty, every agreement. Nothing more. Nothing less. She fixed her gaze on Vrenkel, who had shrunk considerably in his seat. We forgot what humans have been trying to teach us since they arrived. They're not emotional. They're passionate. And there is a profound difference I don't understand. Piptok whispered. Humans, Molsooth explained slowly, as if teaching younglings, operate on a principle they call reciprocity. It's not just about fairness in transaction. It's about relationship. When you treat them as partners, they give you everything, their creativity, their loyalty, their legendary stubbornness in the face of adversity. They will die for allies they consider true friends. She gestured at the empty human seats. But when you betray that trust, when you dismiss their concerns, when you make them feel used rather than valued, they leave. Thessa finished, her form now almost completely dark with distress. No, Molsooth corrected. They withdraw strategically. They audit every interaction, every agreement, every handshake, and they deliver exactly what is owed and legally required. Nothing extra. No goodwill. No flexibility. No friendship. Just cold, hard contractual compliance. Zexthor's processors finally completed his calculations. His voice emerged with a rare note of fear. If my projections are correct, the economic cascade will begin within 20 cycles. The Vrex Collective will experience critical shortages of medical isotopes within 40 cycles. The Kestran Empire will face energy deficits within 60 cycles. At least 7 species will face famine conditions within 100 cycles. Our entire trade network was optimized with human efficiency as a foundational assumption. The council chamber erupted in panicked discourse. Species spoke over each other, translators struggling to keep pace with the cacophony of fear. Accusations flew across the chamber like plasma bolts. Who had pushed for the vote? Who had dismissed the human concerns? Who had thought this was a good idea? Ambassador Vrenkel tried to defend himself, his carapace darkening with stress. This is extortion. They're holding the galaxy hostage because they didn't get their way on one vote. Is it? Krelnak surprised himself with his own vehemence. Because from where I'm sitting, they're doing exactly what we voted for. We passed a resolution mandating they give us their genetic data, despite their objections. They gave it to us, every single profile, complete genetic records of every human in existence. And now we have 46 billion genetic profiles we never wanted in the first place, because we were never actually concerned about disease prevention, were we? We just wanted to assert dominance over the upstart species that made us uncomfortable. Thessa rippled in agreement. Krelnak speaks truth. I voted for that resolution, and I did not do so out of genuine concern for public health. I did it because humans make me uncomfortable. They're adaptable where we are specialized. They're creative where we are traditional. They solve problems by breaking rules we didn't even know we had. And yes, I wanted to remind them they were junior members of this council. As did I, admitted Councillor Paxran of the Chlorine Breathers, his voice bubbling through his environmental suit with shame. They kept proposing changes, innovations, new ways of doing things. They made us feel old, set in our ways, obsolete even. The genetic database was never about safety. It was about control, about reminding them of their place. Molsuth nodded slowly, her ancient eyes sad. And they learned the lesson. They learned exactly where they stand in this council's hierarchy, and having learned it, they have made their own decision about where we stand in theirs. A junior analyst burst into the chamber, violating protocol in their haste. Hi, Arbiter! We've been monitoring human space. They're not preparing for negotiation. They're preparing for isolation. The analyst projected new holographic data into the center of the chamber. It showed human space their home system, their colony worlds, their outposts and stations. Over the past 72 cycles, human ships had been moving in patterns that finally made sense when viewed in aggregate. They're withdrawing every asset from mixed species space, the analyst explained, their voice shaking. Every human on every non-human world has been given priority transportation home. They're consolidating their population, but more than that, the image zoomed in on the borders of human territory. They're building defensive platforms, sensor arrays, not weapons but walls. They're sealing themselves off. That's insane, Vrenkel protested weakly. A species can't just isolate itself from the galactic community. The economic costs alone. Humans, Zexthor interrupted, his processors running historical analyses, are the only species to independently develop nuclear weapons and then choose to partially disarm. They are the only species to reach spacefaring capacity while still maintaining rival nation-states. They are the only species to join the Galactic Council while still having active conflicts on their homeworld. He paused. They are comfortable with paradox in a way we are not. They contain multitudes, as their poets say. They can be both cooperative and isolationist, both generous and coldly calculating, both emotional and strategically brilliant. What does that mean? Piptok asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. It means, Molsuth said heavily, that they will be perfectly fine without us. Uncomfortable, perhaps, initially diminished in some capabilities, but fine, they'll adapt. They always do. It's their defining characteristic, and us? Thessa asked quietly. We, the ancient arbiter replied. optimized our entire modern economy and infrastructure around human participation. We took their efficiency, their innovation, their logistical genius, and we made it load-bearing in our civilization. And we did this in barely 300 cycles because they were just that good at what they do. We became dependent on them, and we never even noticed because we were too busy feeling superior. The council worked through the night cycle and into the next day, trying to understand the full scope of their situation. Every analysis made it worse. Every projection more dire. Human-developed medical technologies shared freely through research partnerships were being withdrawn as patents and licenses expired. Not revoked, that would violate agreements. Simply not renewed. 17 species relied on human-designed treatments for conditions their own medical science had deemed unsolvable. Human agricultural consultants had revolutionized food production on 23 worlds, teaching efficient farming techniques adapted from Earth's diverse biomes. Those consultants were going home, and their contracts clearly stated that their knowledge belonged to them. The infrastructure remained, but the expertise to maintain and adapt it was leaving. Human engineers had designed or significantly improved the efficiency of 40% of the major shipyards in council space. The shipyards would continue to function, but innovation would stagnate. Maintenance would become harder. The humans had made it all look easy, and in doing so, had made everyone forget how difficult it actually was. They were never trying to take over, Krelnax realized aloud, staring at a report on human cultural exchange programs. All these programs, the student exchanges, the art exhibits, the literature sharing, the music broadcasts, they were trying to build genuine relationships. They wanted to be friends. Yes, Molsooth confirmed. Humans are a social species. Intensely, profoundly social. Even their loners and isolated members define themselves in relation to society. They don't just trade, they bond. They don't just negotiate, they build rapport. When they share their culture, they're not showing off. They're inviting you into their family. Piptalk pulled up the cultural exchange data. By the void, they hosted over 10,000 exchange students from other species on Earth itself. Every year, fed them, housed them, educated them, and asked nothing in return except that they share their own cultures too. His ears drooped. And we sent barely 100 students to human worlds. We didn't even reciprocate their basic social overtures. Because we thought it was soft power, Frenkel admitted quietly, his earlier bluster completely gone. We thought they were trying to gain influence through cultural infiltration. We thought it was strategy. It was, Zexthor said, but not the kind we understood. They were building social capital, creating genuine friendships, establishing trust. When they helped our species, they weren't seeking leverage, they were being good neighbors. It's a concept deeply embedded in most human cultures. The idea that you help your community because a strong community benefits everyone. And we exploited it, Thessa said, her form now a dark, guilt-ridden purple. We took and took and took, and we gave back the bare minimum because we thought we were being clever. We thought we were getting a good deal. We were, Molsooth said, an absurdly good deal. They were undercharging for services, over-delivering on contracts and providing innovation for free because they thought of us as partners, as friends, and we thought of them as what? Useful subordinates? Convenient service providers? The chamber fell silent as the truth settled over them like a shroud. On the 74th cycle of silence, a message arrived, not to the council as a whole, but to each species' individual embassy, the same message personalized only by the recipient's name. It came from Ambassador Chen, but the Human Diplomatic Corps logo suggested it represented the unified position of humanity. Krelnax opened his species version with trembling manipulators. The other counselors did the same, each reading in growing horror. To the species name people and government, the message began, with each species seeing their own name filled in. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council and associated cooperative frameworks, effective immediately upon fulfillment of all current contractual obligations. This withdrawal is comprehensive and applies to all political, economic, scientific, and cultural exchanges. This action should not be interpreted as hostility. We do not hate you. We do not wish you ill. We simply no longer trust you. And trust, once broken, cannot be repaired by words alone. When we joined the Galactic Council 300 cycles ago, we came with hope. We came believing that a community of species, each unique, each valuable, could work together toward mutual benefit and shared prosperity. We believed in the principles your founding charter espoused: respect for sovereignty, cooperation without coercion, and the value of diverse perspectives. We were wrong about what those principles meant to you. Your vote to mandate genetic collection despite our specific historical traumas was not the problem itself, though it was a problem. The problem was what it revealed. You do not see us as equals. You see us as junior partners to be managed, children to be corrected, or tools to be utilized. When we objected to policies, you dismissed us as emotional. When we proposed innovations, you viewed us with suspicion. When we shared our culture, you saw propaganda. When we exceeded your expectations, you moved the goalposts. When we asked for respect, you reminded us of our place. We understand now. The Galactic Council is not a community of equals. It is a hierarchy, and you meant for us to remain at the bottom of it, grateful for the privilege of membership. We decline. You will receive no further economic or technological cooperation from humanity beyond the completion of current legal obligations. This includes all trade agreements expired or expiring per contract terms, all technology licenses expiring per their terms, all educational exchanges concluded, all research partnerships dissolved, all cultural programs terminated, all defense coordination withdrawn, all humanitarian aid programs ended. We will maintain basic diplomatic communication channels for emergency situations that affect mutual security. Nothing more. You taught us a valuable lesson about how this galaxy operates. We're grateful for that education. Though the tuition was expensive, we will be fine. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own worst impulses. We will survive this disappointment. We genuinely hope you thrive. We hope your civilizations prosper. We simply will not be part of them anymore. Perhaps in a few generations or centuries or millennia, humanity will reconsider isolation. Perhaps we'll encounter species who actually want partners rather than subordinates. Perhaps you'll grow past whatever made you think treating us this way was acceptable. Until then, we bid you farewell and good fortune. Respectfully, the Human Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of the people of Earth and her colonies, the message ended. No room for response. No negotiation implied. Just a simple final statement of position. Panic set in immediately. Every species scrambled to find solutions to the problems that were now metastasizing across their infrastructure. Emergency councils were called. Experts were consulted. Alternative suppliers were sought. The results were uniformly grim. No other species could replace human shipping capacity. Their ships were simply more efficient, their pilots more adaptable, their logistics algorithms more sophisticated. A few species tried to hire human shipping companies directly, circumventing the council. Those companies politely declined all offers, no matter how generous. No other species had the agricultural knowledge to maintain the human-designed farming systems. Several worlds tried to hire human agricultural experts as private consultants. Those experts were unavailable, having returned to human space with no plans to leave. No other species combined the creativity, work ethic, and adaptability that humans brought to collaborative projects. Species that had worked with human researchers and engineers for cycles suddenly realized how much of the heavy lifting those humans had been doing. We need to send a delegation. Frenkel insisted during one of the many emergency sessions. We need to apologize, negotiate, offer concessions. They won't see us, Krelnak said tiredly, having already tried. I sent 17 diplomatic requests. All returned unopened with a notation. Request denied per Communication Protocol 7. What protocol? I don't remember. I looked it up, Thessa interrupted. It's a protocol the humans proposed 12 cycles after joining. We approved it without discussion because it seemed like standard diplomatic boilerplate. It establishes the right of any species to refuse diplomatic communication from any other species for any reason, with a mandatory cooling-off period before re-request. How long is the cooling-off period? Piptalk asked. 100 cycles minimum. The chamber fell silent. 100 cycles, Frenkel whispered. My civilization will be in economic freefall long before then. Most of us will. Yes, Malsuth agreed. That's what happens when you build a house on a foundation of exploitation and call it cooperation. Eventually, the foundation leaves. And then you learn what was holding you up. 90 cycles passed. The predictions came true, more or less. Some species adapted better than others. The Aquarian depths, who had always maintained strong internal systems, weathered the storm relatively well. The chlorine breathers, used to isolation due to their unique biology, barely noticed the change. The Kestran Empire, which had pushed hardest for human compliance, collapsed into internal strife as their energy infrastructure failed. The Virex Collective experienced the predicted medical crisis, losing thousands before they could adapt their treatment protocols. 17 minor species faced varying degrees of famine before emergency measures and old-fashioned agricultural methods could be revived. Through it all, humanity remained silent. Their borders stayed closed. Their communication channels stayed minimal. They answered direct questions about mutual security threats but offered no other dialogue. Some species grew resentful, blaming humans for their suffering. These species learned another human characteristic. Humans monitor everything. When the Kestran remnant government publicly accused humanity of economic warfare and deliberate sabotage, the human response was immediate and surgical. Humanity released every single communication, every single diplomatic exchange, every single treaty negotiation from their entire time in the Galactic Council, all of it, completely unredacted except for legitimately sensitive security information. 300 cycles of meticulous record-keeping, showing in excruciating detail exactly how every interaction had proceeded. The data dump was devastating. It showed humans repeatedly offering favorable terms and being negotiated down. It showed them proposing solutions to shared problems and being dismissed. It showed them warning about potential issues and being ignored. It showed them asking for respect and being patronized. It showed beyond any doubt that humans had been the most cooperative, most generous, most patient members of the Galactic Council, and it showed exactly how that cooperation had been received. Public opinion across the galaxy shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't humanity who looked unreasonable. Politicians who had blamed humans found themselves facing angry constituents asking why they had treated their most helpful ally so poorly. The Kestran government fell entirely, replaced by a reform movement that immediately issued a formal apology to humanity. The human response was brief. Apology acknowledged. It changes nothing. It was Counselor Thessa who finally understood. She had spent the 90 cycles since humanity's withdrawal studying human culture obsessively, trying to understand what had gone wrong. She read their literature, watched their films, listened to their music, and studied their history. She called an emergency session of the council, but not the full council, just those who she thought might understand. Krelnax came. Maltsuth came. Piptuck came. Zexthor came. Even a representative from the new Kestran government came. Frenkel was notably absent, having retired in disgrace. I understand now, Thessa said, her form displaying the pale blue of revelation. I understand what we did, and I understand why they won't come back. Explain. Maltsuth encouraged gently. Humans, Thessa began, have a concept they call friendship, but it's not like our concept of alliance or partnership. Those are transactional. We work together because it benefits us both. Friendship to humans is something different. It's emotional. It's personal. It's sacred to them. She pulled up human literature showing passage after passage about friendship, loyalty, betrayal. She showed human films where characters would sacrifice everything for friends. She played human music about the pain of broken trust. When they came to the Galactic Council, they didn't come looking for trade partners or strategic allies. They came looking for friends. And we didn't understand that because most of our species don't form that kind of bond outside our own kind. We're tribal in ways humans have spent millennia trying to overcome. But they're tribal too, Krelnax protested. We've seen their history. Wars, nationalism, ethnic conflicts. Yes, Thessa agreed. But they're also the species that invented the idea of adopting individuals from other families into their own. They're the species that creates bonds across genetic lines so strong they call non-related individuals brother and sister and mean it. They're the species that domesticated other species, not enslaved. Domesticated and brought them into their homes and families as equals. She paused, letting that sink in. They were trying to adopt us, she continued. All of us. Into their family. Into their tribe. They were extending the hand of friendship, and we, her form darkened with shame. We saw it as a hand extended for a business handshake. We responded to their offer of family with a contract negotiation. Mulsooth's ancient eyes closed slowly. And when we betrayed their trust, we didn't just break a treaty, Thessa finished. We broke their hearts. And humans, for all their adaptability and resilience, have one profound weakness. They remember emotional wounds. Forever. It's in their art, their music, their stories. The pain of betrayal is a theme that echoes through their entire culture. Thor processed this through his logical frameworks. So the question is not how to negotiate with them. The question is how to heal a relationship we didn't know we were in. Can it be healed? Pip-Talk asked quietly. I don't know, Thessa admitted. But I know we can't approach it as a negotiation. We can't offer trade deals or strategic concessions. Those miss the point entirely. Then what do we do? Asked the Kestran representative. Mulsooth spoke, her ancient voice carrying the weight of understanding. We apologize. Really apologize. Not we regret any offense caused or mistakes were made. We name what we did wrong. We acknowledge the harm. We ask for forgiveness without expecting it to be granted. And then we wait. Wait for what? Krelnax asked. To see if they're willing to even consider that we've learned, that we've grown, that we might someday be worthy of being called their friends. It took another 10 cycles to craft the message. Every word was debated. Every phrase was examined. It couldn't sound like a negotiation. It couldn't include justifications or excuses. It had to be genuine, vulnerable, and honest. Finally, they sent it. Not from the Galactic Council officially, but from individual species. Each one wrote their own version, but they all contained the same core elements. From the Vrex Collective, we were wrong. We treated your concerns as emotional weakness rather than hard-won wisdom. We dismissed your friendship as naivete when it was actually generosity we didn't deserve. We took advantage of your willingness to help. And we gave back only the minimum required. We failed you. We failed ourselves. We're sorry. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't expect a response. We just needed you to know that we understand now what we destroyed. From the Aquarian depths, we see now that you were offering us something precious, and we treated it as something common. You shared your culture, your knowledge, your very selves with us, and we couldn't comprehend the gift because we'd never offered anything similar to anyone outside our own species. We measured your worth by our standards and found you wanting, when we should have been measuring ourselves by yours. We were found wanting. We're sorry. From the Silicon Confederacy. Logic suggests that apologies accompanied by excuses are not true apologies, therefore no excuses. We were wrong. We hurt you. We broke your trust. We treated you as subordinates when you were trying to be friends. We failed to recognize the value of what you were offering, because we were too busy calculating what we could extract. We're sorry. We understand if you never want to speak to us again. We deserve that, and so on, from species after species. Each one different. Each one genuine. Each one sent with no expectation of response. The humans did not respond. Not to any of them. For another 50 cycles, there was silence. On cycle 141, after humanity's withdrawal, something changed. A small human transport ship requested permission to dock at the Galactic Council station, not a diplomatic vessel. A civilian transport carrying a single passenger, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a human xenoanthropologist who had studied Vrex culture for decades before the withdrawal. She wasn't coming as a diplomat. She was coming to deliver a lecture on human Vrex comparative mythology at the university adjacent to the council station, a lecture that had been scheduled 3 cycles before the withdrawal, canceled during the crisis and now apparently reinstated. The Vrex representatives met her at the dock, unsure what to say or do. She smiled at them, a genuine human smile, warm and open, and said, "I hope it's okay that I'm here." The university re-extended the invitation, and I figured, well, I missed my Vrex colleagues. I missed the discussions we used to have. Thought I'd see if we could pick up where we left off. The lecture was attended by every counselor who could make it. Dr. Rodriguez spoke about human and Vrex mythology, about themes of honor, family, loyalty, and betrayal in both cultures. She never mentioned the withdrawal. She never mentioned the crisis. She just talked about stories, about meaning, about the things both species held sacred. After the lecture, Counselor Krelnax approached her hesitantly. "Dr. Rodriguez, does this mean?" She smiled gently. "This means I'm a professor who likes teaching and missed her colleagues." "Nothing more, nothing less," she paused. But Elena Rodriguez, the person? She read your apology, Krelnax, and she believed you meant it. So Elena Rodriguez decided to accept a lecture invitation and see some old friends. And humanity? The diplomatic corps? The government? Oh, they're still not interested in talking to the council, she said matter-of-factly. I checked before I came. This is just me, exercising my right as a free human to travel where I want and talk to who I want. She tilted her head. Though I suspect if a few more humans felt like making individual choices about re-establishing professional or personal relationships, nobody would stop them. We're big believers in individual freedom, after all. Krelnax understood. This wasn't official. This wasn't diplomacy. This was one human testing the waters, seeing if the apologies had meant anything, seeing if relationships could be rebuilt from the ground up, person to person rather than government to government. Would you like to have dinner? He asked nervously. Some of your old research colleagues are still here. We could catch up. As friends. Dr. Rodriguez's smile widened. I'd like that very much. Over the next 50 cycles, more humans started appearing. Not as diplomats or official representatives, but as individuals making individual choices. A human engineer took a contract with an aquarium company, not through any government channel, but through a private employment agency. A human merchant started running cargo again, but only to destinations she personally chose, working with companies she personally trusted. A human musician performed at a Kestran cultural festival. A human doctor volunteered at a clinic on a chlorine breather world. Human students started applying to galactic universities again, though in much smaller numbers than before. Each human who came had the same story. They were acting as individuals, not representatives. They chose their destinations, chose their partners, chose their friends, and they made it clear they could leave again if they felt disrespected or betrayed. The Galactic Council learned to treat them differently. Not as subordinates or even as equals in some abstract diplomatic sense, but as individuals worthy of respect. When a human spoke, people listened. When a human raised a concern, it was taken seriously. When a human said no, that no was accepted. It was slow. It was uncomfortable. It required every species to examine their own assumptions about hierarchy, cooperation, and what it meant to be part of a community. But it was working. 200 cycles after the withdrawal, Counselor Thessa proposed something radical. She'd been meeting regularly with Dr. Rodriguez and other humans who had returned, learning about human concepts of community, friendship, and governance. And she'd had an idea. She brought it to a closed session of the council, the small group that had been working on understanding humanity and rebuilding relationships. What if, she said carefully, we dissolved the Galactic Council? The reaction was immediate shock. Even Mulsooth's ancient composure cracked slightly. Hear me out, Thessa continued. The council was created millennia ago by species who thought of cooperation in terms of hierarchy and transaction. It's built into every structure, every protocol, every assumption. We can't fix it by reforming it. The foundation is wrong. What would replace it? Zexthor asked, genuinely curious rather than dismissive. A confederation, Thessa said. True equals, no permanent seats, no senior and junior members. Decisions made by consensus whenever possible, and when consensus can't be reached. Each species does what they think is right for their own people. No forcing compliance, no majority rule that lets large coalitions bully small species. That sounds like chaos, the Kestran representative said nervously. It sounds like trust, Mulsooth corrected, her ancient eyes brightening. It sounds like what humans were trying to teach us all along. You can't force cooperation. You can only invite it. And you have to be willing to accept when someone says no. Would humans even come back to something like that? Piptok wondered. I don't know, Thessa admitted. But I know they won't come back to this. And I think we need to decide. Do we want to maintain a power structure that feels comfortable to us? Or do we want to build something that might actually work? Something worth being part of? Krelnax surprised everyone by speaking up immediately. I vote for dissolution. If humans never come back, fine. We do this because it's right, not because it's strategic. One by one, the others agreed. Even the Kestran representative, representing a civilization still rebuilding from the collapse, nodded. We've learned what happens when you prioritize power over partnership. I'd rather risk chaos than repeat that lesson. The proposal to dissolve the Galactic Council and create a new confederation of free worlds went to every member species. The debate was fierce. Many species resisted. They liked the old hierarchy, especially those at the top of it. But enough species had suffered through the economic collapse. Enough had read the released diplomatic records and felt shame at their own behavior. Enough had met the humans who were slowly, cautiously returning and seen the difference between transaction and relationship. The vote passed. Barely. But it passed. The Galactic Council officially dissolved after 3,000 cycles of existence. In its place, the Confederation of Free Worlds was established, with a charter written collaboratively by representatives from all member species, including consultation with several humans who had returned as private individuals. Then, Charter's first principle was simple. No species shall be compelled to act against their core values or interests in service of collective will. Membership is voluntary. Cooperation is invited, never demanded. Trust is earned, never assumed. The second principle was equally important. Every voice matters. Size of population, military might, economic power, or length of membership confers no additional authority. All members speak with equal weight. Once established, the Confederation sent an invitation to humanity. Not a request, not a demand, an invitation. It read, "To the people of Earth and her colonies, the Galactic Council has been dissolved. In its place, we have created something new, something we hope reflects the lessons you tried to teach us. The Confederation of Free Worlds invites humanity to join as a founding member, equal to all others. We understand if you decline. We understand if you're not ready. We understand if you never trust us again, but we wanted you to know. We learned. We changed. We grew up. If you're interested, we'd love to have you back. Not as service providers or junior partners, but as friends. If not, we wish you well and hope we've at least become the kind of neighbors you can respect, even if you don't want to join us." With genuine respect and hope, the founding members of the Confederation of Free Worlds. For 50 cycles, humanity was silent. The Confederation went about its business establishing new protocols, new trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, new research partnerships that respected boundaries. The humans who had returned as individuals continued their work. Some of them spoke openly about their opinions. Dr. Rodriguez, in particular, made her position clear in a lecture that was widely broadcast. The Confederation is what the Council should have been from the start. It's not perfect, nothing is, but it's built on the right foundation. As an individual, I think humanity should consider it. But she was careful to add, of course, I'm just one person. Humanity will decide collectively, as we always do. And whatever we decide, it'll be our choice, made for our reasons. Not because anyone pressured us. Then, on Cycle 51, an official communication arrived from Earth. The entire Confederation held its breath. Ambassador Sarah Chen's face appeared on screens across the galaxy. Older now, her hair grayer, but her eyes were the same sharp, intelligent, assessing. "To the Confederation of Free Worlds," she began, and her tone was carefully neutral. "Humanity has reviewed your invitation. We've read your charter. We've consulted with our citizens who have re-established relationships with various species. We've debated extensively. Our decision is this. We're interested, but we're cautious. We propose a probationary partnership. Humanity will participate in Confederation activities for a trial period of 100 cycles. During this time, we'll engage in limited cooperation trade, research, cultural exchange, but we maintain our borders and our independence. We'll attend Confederation meetings as observers with speaking rights but no voting rights. After 100 cycles, we'll reassess. If we feel the Confederation is living up to its charter, we'll consider full membership. If not, we walk away again, no hard feelings. We're also proposing some additions to the charter." She pulled up a document. Protections for dissenting voices. Protocols for addressing grievances before they explode into crises. Required cooling-off periods before major votes. Mandatory impact assessments for policies that disproportionately affect specific species. Basically, we're asking you to build in safeguards against the kind of situation that led to our withdrawal. Think of it as relationship counseling built into the constitutional structure. She smiled slightly. "We're humans. We're good at learning from our mistakes. We're hoping you've gotten good at it too. If you accept these terms, we'll send a delegation. A real one this time. Not just individual volunteers. If you don't, we understand. We'll keep doing what we're doing, being good neighbors from a distance. Your move." The transmission ended. The The Confederation debated for exactly 1 cycle. It was the easiest vote they'd ever taken. Every single species voted to accept humanity's terms. Every single one agreed to the proposed charter amendments. The vote was unanimous. Because, Counselor Thessa explained in the session, they're not asking for concessions. They're asking us to be better, and if we can't agree to that, we don't deserve them as partners. Molsooth, now semi-retired but attending as an honorary observer, smiled her ancient smile. The young ones are learning. Finally. The response was sent within hours. All terms accepted. All amendments approved. We look forward to working with you. Welcome home. 50 cycles later, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the Confederation chamber. It was different from the old council room. Circular seating remained, but now every seat was identical. No raised platforms. No positions of prominence. Just a circle of equals. She was greeted by every ambassador personally. Not with formal diplomatic protocols, but with genuine warmth. Thessa rippled her form in a gesture humans had learned meant joy at reunion. Krelnax offered a traditional Vrex greeting of respect between equals. Piptalk practically bounced with excitement. Even the Silicon Confederacy representatives, typically stoic, displayed welcoming patterns in their crystalline structures. "Thank you for having us back," Chen said simply. "Let's see if we can make this work." "Together," Thessa agreed. "As partners. As friends. As equals," added Krelnax. "As family," Piptalk suggested hopefully. Chen smiled, genuinely smiled. "Let's start with friends and see where it goes. We humans like to take relationships 1 step at a time." "Wise," Molsooth rumbled approvingly from her observer seat. "Rushing led to the problems last time. Better to build slowly and build right." And so they did. The probationary period was rocky. Old habits died hard. There were moments when species forgot themselves and tried to push through votes without proper consideration for minority voices. There were times when the old hierarchical thinking crept back in, but now there were safeguards. And more importantly, there were humans paying attention. The first time a coalition tried to rush a vote on resource allocation without hearing from smaller species, Ambassador Chen simply stood up and said, "Point of order. We're doing the thing again." That was all it took. The coalition paused, reconsidered, and opened proper dialogue. The second time, it was a human engineer working on a joint infrastructure project who noticed that one species' safety concerns were being dismissed as inefficiency complaints. She stopped work and refused to continue until those concerns were properly addressed. Her team mixed species, all of them backed her up. The concerns turned out to be valid, and addressing them prevented what would have been a catastrophic failure. Humans had become, almost accidentally, the conscience of the Confederation. Not because they were morally superior, they were quick to point out their own historical and ongoing failings, but because they'd been on the receiving end of dismissal and disrespect. They recognized the patterns, and they called them out. It made some species uncomfortable, but it made the Confederation better. Trade flourished. Research partnerships produced breakthroughs. Cultural exchanges deepened understanding. The Confederation wasn't perfect, but it was functional in a way the old council had never been. And slowly, carefully, humanity began to trust again. The vote 99 cycles into the probationary period, Ambassador Chen called for a meeting of the Confederation leadership. Not a full session, just the core group that had been working together most closely. "We need to talk about the upcoming decision," she said without preamble. "In 1 cycle, humanity either commits to full membership or walks away. Our people are debating. I need to know, has this worked?" "Really worked?" "Define worked," Zexthor requested, not dismissively but genuinely seeking clarity. "Are we partners?" Chen asked bluntly. "Real partners? Or are we still just going through the motions, being polite while waiting for things to go back to how they were?" The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of people genuinely considering an important question. Thessa spoke first. 3 cycles ago, my government wanted to establish a new mining operation in a disputed sector. The old council would have voted, the majority would have won, and the minority would have complied or been punished. Instead, we negotiated. We compromised. We found a solution that everyone could live with, even though it was harder and took longer. We did that because it was right, Not because you made us, but because we've learned that forcing compliance doesn't build community. Krelnax added, my species nearly collapsed economically during the crisis after you left. We blamed you at first. Then we looked at the data and realized we'd built our entire economy, unassuming you'd always be there to bail us out. We've restructured. We're more self-sufficient now, less efficient in some ways, but more resilient. And we did it because we learned that you can't build sustainability on someone else's generosity. The Kestran government that pushed the genetic database resolution doesn't exist anymore, the Kestran representative said quietly. We elected a completely new leadership on a platform of fundamental reform. We're still recovering, and we will be for generations, but we're different. We had to be. Pip talk, usually cheerful, was serious. My species was always small, always overlooked. In the old council, we barely mattered. Here, people listen when I speak. Really listen. Not because I represent a strategic asset, but because I represent people whose voices matter. That wouldn't have happened without you forcing us to examine our assumptions. Mulsooth, ancient and wise, spoke last. I have seen 3 galactic civilizations rise and fall, child. This one, she gestured at the room, is the first I've seen that might actually deserve to survive. Because for the first time it's built on relationships instead of power. And you taught us that. You paid a terrible price to teach us, but you taught us. Chen's eyes were bright. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll take that back to Earth. I can't promise what the vote will be. We're a democracy, and everyone gets their say, but I'll tell them what you told me. What do you want, Sarah? Thessa asked gently, not as Ambassador Chen, as Sarah Rodriguez Chen, the person. Chen smiled. I want to believe again. I want to trust that this time it's real. I want... She paused, vulnerable in a way ambassadors rarely allowed themselves to be. I want to be part of something bigger than humanity. Something worthy. Something that makes the stars feel less empty. Then stay, Thessa said simply. Help us be worthy. The future the vote on Earth was close. The scars from the previous betrayal hadn't fully healed. Many humans argued for continued caution, for maintaining independence, for never again trusting species who had proven untrustworthy. But more humans, barely more, but enough voted to try. To take the risk, to believe that people could grow and change, to hope that this time things would be different. Ambassador Chen delivered the news personally to a full session of the Confederation. Humanity accepts full membership in the Confederation of Free Worlds. We're all in, partners, equals, friends. The chamber erupted in celebration, each species expressing joy in their own way. Thessa glowed brilliant gold. Krelnax's species released bioluminescent pheromones that translated as profound happiness. Piptalk literally jumped for joy. Even Zexthor's crystalline form sparkled with patterns that meant optimal outcome achieved. But Chen held up a hand, and the celebration quieted. We're all in, she repeated, but we need you to understand something. We're fragile in ways you're not. We feel betrayal deeper. We remember hurt longer. We're going to need patience. We're going to need reassurance. We're going to need you to keep being the people you've become over the last 100 cycles, even when it's hard, even when old habits are more comfortable. We understand, Thessa said, speaking for the chamber. You're not the only ones who changed. We changed too, and we can't go back to who we were even if we wanted to. You've fundamentally altered how we think about community and cooperation. You've made us better, and we're grateful. Then let's build something amazing, Chen said, her smile genuine and warm. Let's show the galaxy what real cooperation looks like. Let's create something so good that other species look at us and think, I want to be part of that. Together, the chamber responded in 12 languages, through 12 translator systems, but with unified intent. Together, Chen agreed. 500 cycles later, the Confederation Historical Archives, Luna Station, 500 cycles after the crisis of silence. A young human student named Marcus stood before a holographic display showing the old Galactic Council chamber. His professor, a elderly Vrex named Krelnax III, grandson of the original counselor, waited patiently while Marcus processed what he was seeing. I don't understand, Marcus said finally. Why did they treat us that way? Didn't they realize we were trying to help? Krelnax III rippled his manipulators in what humans had learned to recognize as a gesture of regret, mixed with understanding. they realized eventually. But at the time? No. My grandfather wrote extensively about this. We came from species that had evolved different social structures. For most species, cooperation only extends to genetic relatives or, at most, to species mates. The idea of chosen family, of adoption across species lines, of friendship as a sacred bond, those were foreign concepts. But they learned, Marcus's classmate, a young Aquarian named Thaw of the Bright Waters, added. She was named after the famous counselor, as many Aquarians of her generation were. My ancestors' writings talk about how humans fundamentally changed their understanding of community. At a terrible cost, Krelnax III reminded them gently. The crisis of silence killed thousands across multiple species. Economic collapses, famines, medical crises, all because the old council couldn't accept that different didn't mean inferior, that newer didn't mean lesser, that emotional didn't mean weak. And now? Marcus asked. The professor gestured to the window where dozens of species moved freely through the station, working together, laughing together, living together. Now we have the Confederation, 37 member species, each independent, each valued, each free to say no. We have 17 associate members who participate without full membership. We have cultural exchange programs on a scale the old council never imagined. We have mixed species crews on most ships, mixed species research teams, mixed species families. My parents are human and chlorine breather, offered another student, a young hybrid named Alex who wore an environmental suit to survive in the oxygen atmosphere. They met on a research station and fell in love. That wouldn't have been possible under the old council. No, Krelnax III agreed. The old council thought cooperation was about transaction. The Confederation understands it's about relationship. And we have humanity to thank for teaching us that, the hard way. Do you think, Marcus asked thoughtfully, that it could happen again? Could we forget and go back to old patterns? The professor was silent for a moment, his species equivalent of deep thought. Yes, he said finally, honestly, it could. Power corrupts. Hierarchy feels natural to many species. Exploitation is easier than equity. We could forget. Then why don't we? Thaw of the Bright Waters asked. Because, the professor said, pulling up the famous message Ambassador Chen's withdrawal speech, preserved in the archives as a reminder. We remember. We teach every generation what happened. We show them this. He gestured to the hologram of the old council chamber. And we show them this. He shifted the display to the modern Confederation chamber, where species worked together as equals. And we ask them, which do you want to be? The Confederation, all the students answered together. A mixed chorus of human voices, Vrex clicks, Aquarian bubbles, and various other species' communication methods harmonizing through their translators. Then make sure it stays that way, Krelnax III said, because the price of forgetting is too high to pay again. The students filed out, chattering among themselves in the easy multilingual mix that had become common in Confederation space. Marcus lingered, looking at the old council chamber one more time. Professor, can I ask one more question? Of course. Do you think Ambassador Chen ever really forgave them? Your grandfather and the others? Krelnax III's form rippled in what humans had learned to recognize as bittersweet nostalgia. She attended my grandfather's death ceremony, gave a eulogy, called him a friend. So yes, I think she forgave. But I don't think she ever forgot. Humans don't, you know. They remember everything. It's one of their most terrifying and most beautiful qualities. And they're still here working with everyone, after everything that happened. Because humans, the professor said gently, believe in second chances, in redemption, in the possibility of change. They hurt deeper than most species, but they also hope harder. It's what makes them both vulnerable and extraordinary. Marcus nodded, processing this. Then he smiled. I'm glad they stayed. So am I, Krelnax III agreed. So am I. They stood together in the archives, a human and a Vrex, looking at the history of both species' greatest shame and greatest triumph. The crisis of silence had nearly broken them all. Instead, it had taught them how to be better. And that lesson, passed down through generations, written in the stars and in the hearts of billions across dozens of species, was the foundation of something stronger than the galaxy had ever seen. A true community of equals, built not on power but on the radical, revolutionary, very human idea of friendship. The end author's note. This story explores themes common to HFY, humanity, yeah, science fiction, human exceptionalism, our capacity for both deep hurt and profound forgiveness, our tendency toward egalitarianism, and our ability to form bonds across barriers that other species find insurmountable. The crisis of silence represents a thought experiment. What happens when a genuinely cooperative species encounters a power structure built on hierarchy? What happens when emotional intelligence meets transactional thinking? And most importantly, what does real reconciliation look like? The answer this story suggests is uncomfortable, slow, and requires genuine change from everyone involved. But it's possible. It's always possible. That's the most human thing of all.